Anna Marie.
Hey.
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. It somehow falls that every time we have these calls, it falls on my midterm day.
Oh my gosh, Noor, I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay, but tonight's the last one, so just letting you know, my midterm's at 6:45, so I'll probably be cutting out around 6:30ish.
Okay, cool. No problem.
It'll probably be different next semester, so.
Yeah. What class is it for?
It's for calc.
Okay.
It's a little rough.
Oh.
Yeah, we have 3 midterms, and tonight's our 3rd midterm, and then we have our final exam in like a week and a half.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Coming up soon. But
Too
that break is
soon.
gonna feel so nice.
Once it gets here, I'll feel a lot better. How have you been? How's grad school?
Grad school is good. It was a much needed Thanksgiving break, and
You can definitely say that.
like it's right before everything gets super crazy again, so I'm kind of enjoying the not craziness.
I feel that.
Yeah, but it's been good. Thanks for asking.
Hi, Emma.
Hey guys, how are you?
Hey, good. How are you,
Good.
Emma?
Doing good.
We're just talking about finals.
Yeah, I was listening and yeah, I just had one today too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that's
I
early.
think it went okay. Yeah, I already took this was my second one.
Wow.
My second
Wow.
final. Yeah, so like I have one on finals week. And
Nice.
it's the last day. So like that's annoying, but yeah.
At least you've got all that time to study for it, I guess.
I guess.
I would have probably tried to take it early.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
I don't want to though because I need the time to study. So
Yeah. That too.
yeah.
That's how it is with all my finals that are late. It's kind of the same thing. It's like I would love to take this early and get out of here, but at the same time,
Yeah.
this whole studying thing.
Yeah, I need a little bit more time.
Just a little.
So close. And then we get 3 weeks just to do nothing.
Whatever we want.
Oh, it's going to be so good.
Do you guys have any big plans for your break, or just kind of trying not to make plans at the moment?
I'll actually be driving down to South Carolina.
Oh, will you now?
I will be. My grandmother is having knee surgery, so I'm going down to help her out. Mm-hmm.
That's fun.
Yeah, it'll be very exciting.
South Carolina is beautiful, but you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get to go to Florida, so that'll be fun.
Oh, that will be cool.
Are you going with friends or your family or?
I think I might go a week earlier to hang out with one of my friends, but then I'm staying next week. My family's flying in. We're going to my cousin's wedding, so.
Aww, that'll be fun.
Yeah, it'll be good to not be in Ohio over winter break, especially like their wedding is like Christmas.
Yeah.
So it'll be fun to be in the sun on the beach.
Oh yeah.
How about you, Anna Marie? What do you have planned?
I have nothing.
That sounds nice.
I'm gonna go home. I'm gonna go home for a little bit, and I'll probably, even though we have 3 weeks off, I'll probably stay 2 weeks and then come back and like really take those first 2 weeks to like meal prep, like a whole bunch of stuff and freeze it, and kind of start getting ready for the semester to start back up. But my family keeps talking about taking a family trip somewhere, but they don't know where yet.
Yeah, weren't you talking about coming up to Cincinnati?
I don't think that was me.
It wasn't you. I thought you were going to come see Noah's Ark.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I think I was thinking Kentucky.
Oh, it's right on that border, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Hey guys, it's
So we'll
Gabby.
be doing a switch.
Hey, Gabby.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
So let's see. So I have Emma, Nora, and Gabby, and I have some other phone numbers that showed up. Who else is on the call with us today?
Hey guys, it's Ashley.
Hey, Ashley.
How's it going?
It's going well. How about you?
Good. Sorry I'm on the phone. I'm stuck in traffic right now. So.
Oh, no, you're okay.
Hey everyone, this is Oakley. Like Ashley, I'm stuck in traffic.
Oh no. All right, awesome. Is there anybody else on the call with us that we missed? Great. All right. So we'll go ahead and get started since I know that Nor has a midterm and you all are super busy. So we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome. Thanks for making some time to make this call tonight. So first thing on our agenda, I'm just going to talk real briefly about a couple updates for our cohort that you guys might be interested in. So the first thing is that Elizabeth and I worked with Abby and Kenitra a couple weeks back when we had a conversation with Steve Barr regarding the proposal for the Young Alumni Summit. So we kind of shared the same presentation that was shared with us at the last full committee meeting, and just kind of gave him an overview of kind of our vision for it, what the purpose of having this is, why we think that this fills a need for the young alumni, for young 4-H alumni. So we talked to him about that, and he seemed really on board. He was very excited about it. And he said that he is definitely interested in working together with us on that. So that's something that hopefully within the coming months, we'll get more information about it as far as like what steps council is going to take and what our role within that will be. But just wanted to let you guys know that that proposal had been made and that he seemed really on board. And so did the rest of the council members that we talked to. So that's really good news for us. Second thing is just a quick note, the survey that we're working on for our young alumni cohort is something that the fundraising team, they also have some different research needs that they need met as well. So upcoming in the future, we may be doing some collaboration with them to come up with some things to add to our survey as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about the survey in a little bit, but we've been in communication with Elizabeth, and we've been kind of working to see if there's any way that we can collaborate on that. So that may be a full committee project for a portion of the survey development. And then the last thing is coming up in January, we'll be having a little bit of a leadership transition. So you guys have heard me talk a little bit about how God School's a little bit crazy. And I think that it's going to be, after having talked with Abby and Kenitra, I think that the best thing for our cohort moving forward is going to be for someone to take over cohort chair, just so that way the time can be put into it, some time that I'm not able to give. So as per our discussion back in August when we met for the first time as a committee, when we as a cohort kind of appointed chairs or kind of voted on the cohort chairs, Emma had been the runner-up, and Emma and I have already talked, and Emma said that she would be willing to in January make that transition and take over the cohort chair position. So I just wanted to let you guys know ahead of time that that was something that we had discussed, and that was something that was coming down the line, just that way you guys weren't surprised. And I also just really appreciate you guys being flexible with my crazy schedule. And I think that this is going to ultimately kind of help us stay on track more. And I think Emma's going to be able to give a little bit more time to the position that I might not necessarily be able to. So many thanks to Emma for agreeing to take on that leadership position. But I wanted to let you guys know about that ahead of time. So those are all of our main updates. Anybody have any questions so far? Okay, great. So just kind of a quick run through. So we're going to talk about three things tonight. The first thing is we're going to talk about our survey. We're going to talk a little bit about some top line marketing objectives, because one of the things that we're looking at in the future is developing a marketing strategy. And we're also going to talk a little bit about that end goal of the Alumni Association. So the first thing is we'll talk about the survey. So before I turn it over to Emma to just kind of give us an update on the progress of that, if you saw the framework document that I had that I emailed out when I emailed the meeting reminder, you may have noticed if you looked at that timeline, you may have noticed a couple things switch around a little bit. So I know in our last meeting we talked initially about trying to get our survey out by the beginning of December. And after having talked a little bit with Ashley and Danelle, they had recommended that we wait until the first of the year. And the reason why is because things could get lost within the holiday shuffle. A lot of times people will not really be as on top of emails, and then people take breaks from work and from school and that sort of thing. So we thought that we kind of revised that timeline with a goal of implementing that survey on January 1st. That'll be when people have just set their New Year's resolution. Maybe they're feeling really good and on top of things, so they're going to start checking their emails and responding to things more. Hopefully, it'll also, all the holidays will be over, so we'll have that full month of January to really focus on that development. And what that does for us is that that allows us, before the survey is implemented, to spend a little bit more time on just making sure that all the fine tuning has been done, making sure that we have identified the proper channels in which to market this, and just making sure all of our ducks are in a row. So it gives us a little bit more time, and then we can have a clear plan for when we implement it, and then what to do with that information when we finish at the end of January. So what we've kind of proposed is that our survey, our kind of hard deadline is going to be for the survey and all of the changes and the final draft to be ready. Let me look at my calendar. I believe by the week of the 11th or 12th. Yeah, the week of the 11th, sometime within that week, to have gone ahead and finalized that survey. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that development now. So Emma, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about the kind of our progress so far on the survey and where we're at, and what everything's looking like.
Yeah, so as you said, we are partnering with the fundraising committee on this survey, and so I'm still waiting to hear back about what their questions are going to look like and how they want me to implement that into our SurveyMonkey. I sent out the link to you guys maybe a week or two ago, just to let you guys kind of give feedback and edits and comments and suggestions. So thank you to Anna Marie, Gabby, and Ashley for all those comments. That's really helped. I implemented all of them, and so we can go ahead and talk more about that. For those that haven't had a chance to look at it yet, please do so and email me any additional comments, edits, suggestions, and then I can go ahead and get that in and done before the fundraising committee sends me their questions, and then I'll put in those, and then we can send it out by that January deadline that you were talking about. And so I think that it came together really well. There are about 35 questions in the survey, and then a nice thank you wrap up at the end with some of our Raise Our Hand campaign advertisements, and the Pay It Forward advertisements as well. So are there any questions about the survey, anything like that?
I actually do have one. So I was checking it out, and on the questions that people already made comments on, it won't allow me to make a comment because the max of one comment has already been made.
Oh, no.
So how did you want me to go about getting that information to you?
So if you can go ahead and do it, Gabby came up with a great way to do it. So if you just want to email me the question number and then the edit that you have next to that within like an email, Word document, however you want to do that, and then just email it to me, I can go ahead and make those edits from there.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other
Hey,
questions?
Emma, this is Oakley. And I want to apologize. As soon as I got the email to take the survey and look at it, I did. I didn't see anywhere to add comments. I saw an email later on, and it's just been hectic, so I do apologize. But I will say this. I think it was question number 8, and I'll email this to you as well so you can have it in writing. It was one of them talking about what type of activities you've been involved in. Maybe someone else caught this and said something about it. but it seemed very, very, very specific, if that makes sense. I just thought it needed to be a little bit more broad and general. Maybe someone else called it or whatever. But that was really the only thing that I caught.
Oh, wonderful. Yes, someone did make a comment on that, and I tried to tweak it a little bit. If you guys can go back and look at that and maybe send me some suggestions of how those bullet points should be laid out to make it more broad, understanding amongst varying states, that would be great too. Any other comments, questions, concerns?
Overall, it looks really good. You did a really awesome job.
Thank you. All right, I think that's it. I'll turn it over back to you, Anna Marie.
All right, sounds good. So yes, so it looks great. Everything and the way that that you guys have been collecting, or that Emma's been collecting the comments and some of the suggestions that you guys have had, I've been keeping up with those, and everything looks great. And I think that based on everything that everyone has said and based on when I've looked at it, it really does look like this kind of meets our goal. And that was our kind of the main purposes of this survey were to determine what kind of messaging speaks to our young alumni, what their involvement and experience has been thus far, what they would like their experience to be like as an alumni, and whether or not they're interested in some of the things that we're looking at, like a Young Alumni Association, a summit, those sorts of things. So I just wanted to open it up for discussion and kind of make sure, does anyone feel like it does or does not meet kind of those goals that we set? Is there anything that you remember from the last meeting that that we talked about that maybe we want to make sure that's incorporated into this, or anything that you feel like we're missing?
This is Oakley, and when I looked at it, it looked very comprehensive to me. I agree. Emma done a terrific job setting it up.
Thank you.
All right. So hearing no more discussion, it sounds good. And I do agree. I think that it looks great. I think, and like I said, I think that it meets the goals that we set. I did want to bring up, I know that we had talked at one point about possibly having another survey for state and local professionals within 4-H. Is that something that we still want to do, or do we feel like this survey will capture our needs accurately as far as research goes?
This is Emma for those that are on the call. And I believe that it really does capture what we need at the moment. I feel like it's pretty comprehensive. There are a lot of questions within it. And I feel like if we mass send this out and really push for people to fill this out, that we're going to receive data back from our county and our state level professionals. So I feel like maybe later in time we can kind of create another survey and then implement that. But for right now, I think that this one is comprehensive for our current goals.
Mm-hmm.
This is Ashley. I totally agree. I think let's get the learnings from the young alumni. If professionals fill it out too, great. But once we get those learnings, then we can go back and see if there's a need to dig deeper anywhere with professionals.
Okay. Any other comments or suggestions regarding that? Okay, great. That sounds good. So with that being said, we will definitely use these this next week and a half to really finalize some of those questions on the survey, make sure that it has all of the different aspects that we need. We'll make sure that we proofread it several times. So if you haven't gotten a chance to look at it yet, please make sure that you do that, and I'll send a reminder in another email. But with that being said, we'll take these next 2 weeks to work on that. But one of the things that we also will need to work on developing is a distribution plan. So I was talking with Ashley a little bit earlier this week, and she's going to share some of her thoughts on how we can develop this plan and what channels we can advertise the survey through and encourage participation.
Yeah, I just think that's a really important piece to this, because we don't want to have gone through all of this and have like high hopes of what we're going to find out, and then we get like 100 people to respond. So I think one of the ways I can help with this is to really utilize all of National 4-H Council's marketing channels to make sure that we're putting this survey in front of alumni. And you'll see, and maybe just Emma saw, but I added in a lot of kind of qualifier style questions into the survey that instead of just having, you know, the age groups of the people we want, also additional age groups, or like actually not an alumni kind of boxes, because that'll allow us to, as we get this survey out to, you know, as wide an audience as possible, there's going to be people that randomly sneak in that think they're helping, but actually aren't in the, you know, target that we want to get insights from. So it'll allow us to kind of weed them out if we have all those categories built into the survey. So I think, you know, I can, you know, talk to my team and we can put it in, you know, our emails to alumni, to, you know, our, you know, network of 4-H professionals as well, and ask them to share it in their networks. We can put it out on our social channels and our alumni Facebook group, on LinkedIn. Like, we can kind of exhaust all of the digital channels. My question for you guys is, what other ideas do you have to kind of get it out within your own networks on the local level that, you know, I might not be able to reach with, you know, national emails or Facebook posts? So I wanted to just kind of open it up and see what you guys were thinking. And if anybody kind of had a number in mind of, okay, this is the number of responses we'd really love to get.
I know specific. Oh, Emma, did you want to go first? Okay. So I know a lot of times, like, I know in our state, we have a database of people that have registered to be alumni, but also on the local and state levels. Like, if I go in and ask, like, your county professional, like my state educator, they can tell me they know a bunch of people that they still keep in contact with that still are alumni, and they have those connections to send them out, and they can send them out in their newsletters, different foundations, their state board, whatever means that may be. So I think getting in contact with those people specifically and tapping into who they know is going to be really helpful.
And I think that we all, as board members, not just only on our committee, but also in the fundraising committee, putting it out within our own networks, so on our social medias, on our LinkedIn, on all of those different platforms to try and push it as much as we can. I think that that's definitely going to be key because we are the young alumni, the target audience, and so our peers are also the target audience. So I think that that's where we need to focus. And then also, within our own individual states, I know at least within Ohio, we have extension professional, like mass emails that we can send out. And so sending it out within that to then push to the individual counties, because that's really where, you know, the groundwork is and where the people are. So if we can do that within our own states, and then potentially if there is a national extension mass email thing that we can slide that into, I think that that would be very beneficial as well.
Yeah, I love that. Anything else? I mean, I think with that, you know, does anybody have like a number in mind where they're like, man, you know, I really want to get this number. You know, what I don't want to do is just make it, you know, a small number of responses so that it doesn't feel like representative of a whole. So like the number that kind of sticks out in my head is like at least 1,000. Is that like scary? Is that too small? Feels about right? Anybody?
I think that's perfect.
Yeah.
I think that sounds great.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so let's shoot for that. And the only then other caution I have is, and especially knowing that we're going to be adding in questions from the fundraising cohort, which we absolutely should be doing, is we need to make sure that it's not so long that people aren't going to make it through, or they see like, oh, there's 100 questions, I don't want to do this.
And that was my concern too, even just filling out like with what we have right now. So like in your experience, Ashley, what is the too much number? Do you know what that kind of range is?
Oh, that's a loaded question, because, you know, you're going to say, a lot of people are going to say anything over like 10 questions, which obviously we need more than 10 questions. But I also think we have a much more like kind of engaged and invested audience than we're just trying to get, you know, any random person to take a survey about how much they like Diet Coke. So I think we'll be fine if we take a look. Okay, so once we get the fundraising questions in, I would say we look back at it again and see if there's any of those, you know, like I called earlier, I think qualifier questions of, you know, if you answer this way, then you see 5 more questions. If you say no, you don't see that question set. And just see if there's any way that we can kind of trim it down a little bit for that, or even like, you know, add in some of the age qualifiers up front. So if somebody says I'm, you know, over the age of 40, then again, not sure how jazzy Survey Monkey can get, but have it say, you know, thanks, we already have all of the answers we need from your age group, kind of thing. So look for ways to kind of trim it down for certain audiences.
That sounds good. Okay, awesome. Great. So with that, Ashley, were you saying, and I know we had talked about this a little bit before, kind of in pushing it to the state levels, kind of from the national level. Is there like an email that goes out specifically to like the state extension staff in each state as like this is something that you can pass on to the counties? Or I mean, is there kind of a pipeline with that?
I can't remember what the specific audience is, but weekly we send out, we call it news and notes. It goes out to our 4-H we have in our database, and we try to keep that as up to date as possible. So we could absolutely include it in that, you know, it's just like an ongoing promotion for, you know, every week in January. But we have our field marketing team that I can tap into next week and just get ideas from them on ways to get it out in their networks too, because they're, you know, on the phones and on email talking to states all the time. So they might have another idea of a way to kind of distribute this information and the goal of what we're trying to do in their regular communications with their team.
Okay.
So I'll talk to them next week and see if they have any other ideas to throw in.
Okay, that sounds great. So while we're on this call, even though we don't necessarily know what the specifics of how they might be helping distribute on that end, I thought that it would be good within this meeting to identify kind of some roles or personal goals for us, so that way we all have a hand in that distribution process, kind of identifying what we would do. I mean, my idea was, since we all do have connections at the very least in our home state, with our state extension staff, most of us have some sort of connection like that. If maybe we could reach out to them once the survey is developed and personally encourage them, let them know a little bit about the work that we're doing on the committee, and encourage them to distribute that out to the counties within our state. So I'm going to open it up for discussion if anyone has any suggestions on the personal roles that we can all take as cohort members, so that way we all have kind of an active hand in helping the survey get distributed.
So I think that, as we stated earlier, you know, everyone has to take their own state and really push it within their own. But I think that really it's going to fall back on if there is that national listserv, and it sounds like there is. So maybe we do that, you know, send it out, and then we can see how many numbers we're getting back at what rate, and then kind of go from there. To see, okay, well, maybe I'll take, you know, 5 states and really push it in those areas. So that would be my thought process. But again, you know, I don't know.
I like that idea. Okay. Any other suggestions?
Shouldn't we still have all the emails from the Raise Your Hand campaign that were submitted?
Yeah, that's what I mean with pushing it out
Okay.
through our national channels. It would go out to our alumni database, and you know, we could do it to professionals as well. We could put it on our Facebook. Like, I think we're covered there, at least promotion-wise. You know, not everybody who sees it's going to do it, but we will make sure that we're rotating it into all of our marketing communications for the month of January.
Great.
Honestly, I think the biggest thing is like not only promoting it yourself, but if you can get all the people that you know to take it, and then they're gonna get their friends to take it, it's just gonna grow that way, which sounds like really hard because like you should tap into your own network. But I've seen that's like the most effective thing is if you can get your friends to make their friends take it that are also like not only in the state, but people they met at like CWF or conference or Congress or other events, people that they keep in touch with, whether that's like actually keep in touch with or just like, hey, DM them on social media or things like that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I can send it out to 100,000 people via an email, but you might get, 100 people to take it. So you have to keep telling them and keep telling them and keep telling them. But if you guys each send, 20 personal emails to people you know or groups of people you know and ask them to pass it on, that's where you're going to get like a really high response rate.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Ashley, this is Oakley. I do have a question about that, and this may be the dumbest question you ever hear, but I'm just from South Georgia. We're not real smart from down that way. But anyhow, if we do that, which I think that's a good idea, but I'm worried, my 20 good close friends that I know would be interested in it, I can almost go ahead and tell you what their responses would be. That they're going to be highly favorable of this, wanting to do all this, et cetera, et cetera. So if we send it out to people like that, could that, sway the results by any means, or is that anything to worry about?
I wouldn't worry about it because we're doing it pretty informally. Like we don't have the time or money to do a true like nationwide representative random sample survey. If we were going to go that route, then yes, that's where you'd start worrying about bias and who you're targeting. But there's whole companies that are built off of doing random samples. I would say for this work and even knowing our national channels, you're still a little bit biased because the people that are in our database and follow our Facebook pages are 4-Hers for the most part. So we're already kind of tapping into a biased audience anyway. I want to say that, 95% of my gut's telling me everyone's going to come back and be like, yes, we totally want this alumni association. I don't necessarily think that's the question. It's more of, well, what do you expect in that? So I think that's where we can really get the insights. And I think it's totally okay if it's, friends and family. If we get at least 1,000 people, ideally more, then we still know that it's a pretty good sample. It's not the 50 people we all know.
Okie doke, thank you.
That's a good point.
Not a stupid question. Good question.
Mm-hmm. Great. All right. Well, does anybody have any more discussion points or any questions regarding the survey distribution? All right, so kind of our next steps, what we'll do is, again, we'll keep working on finalizing that survey. Ashley has already said that she's going to reach out to her channels and find out what methods that National 4-H will be able to promote it. And as far as what we'll do on our level, once the survey is finalized, we'll work on tapping into our personal networks, the people that we know, and our personal states. And then once we see what kind of responses that we're getting back, maybe evaluate it in early or mid-January. Once we see kind of the rate of responses, we'll determine whether or not we need to have any additional efforts to try and gather responses. Sounds good? All right. So moving on from the survey, the next agenda item, kind of switching gears a little bit, I wanted to address the marketing strategy that we had mentioned briefly at the last meeting. So one of the things that we talked about was kind of at the end of this first year, once we have seen what kind of research results we get, and once we see kind of what messaging does speak to 4-Hers or 4-H alumni, and what kind of priorities they have, and what channels that they interact with 4-H through, and that sort of thing. Once we get some more information back from them about how they want their alumni experience to look like, we can start developing a marketing strategy for the upcoming 2 years of how we can utilize our social media channels, if we're going to have events, what kind of things we need to include, and so on. So what I thought it might be beneficial for us to do tonight was to identify some top line marketing objectives. So for example, maybe we know that within the next 2 years, one of the areas that we want to focus on is our social media presence or our online alumni community. So even though we don't know what that's going to look like because we haven't received those responses yet, we can at least identify like, okay, based on the responses that we get, we're going to focus on developing the online alumni community, our Young Alumni Summit, and maybe one of the other ideas that I know we had discussed at the last meeting was maybe some sort of marketing packet or training packet. So something that when state 4-H professionals are looking for ways to connect with their alumni, maybe have a packet of information or a guideline for how they can get their 4-Hers who are getting ready to age out to transition into the alumni community, some sort of field marketing, field training packet. So I just wanted to open that up for discussion, and the goal is to identify 2 to 3 main areas, so kind of 3 top line areas of development for our marketing strategy, so that way once we get all of our research in, we can just kind of use that to shape those those objectives. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. So I'll open that up for discussion.
I definitely think the Young Alumni Summit and social media should be our points. Social media, like I know there is an alumni group, but I also know that it's not very active and it's not super up to date. So I think that'd be a really key point to hit on because no one else has really approached that yet. So it'd be really easy and nice for us to take that over. And then also like the Young Alumni Summit, I think we all agree that it's going to be phenomenal. So, you know.
This is Ashley. I really like the idea of some sort of like training packet, or just in general, like guidelines that would help, local offices educate them on what to tell, alumni or, kids as they're aging out of 4-H or graduating, how, either it's like pamphlets that we give them or like, some sort of documents or like even like hey, you're graduating, here's an extra pin or patch and like there's a tag on it that says go here, like some sort of like transition packet and then a training material that goes along with it for, any program leaders or professionals.
So I have a question. It's Gabby, by the way. I heard, sorry, I had to get off the call for a second because I'm still at work. I couldn't get off of work tonight. But I heard that we were talking about the marketing strategy, and then we started talking about the packet that we would give to state people who need to train their young alumni who are coming out of the program. So is that going to be the same thing? Is that what the marketing strategy is for?
Kind of. So what we're talking about is kind of within our marketing strategy, just what those top line objectives would be. So based on what the responses to our survey are and what it looks like people are wanting out of their alumni experience, if part of our marketing strategy, maybe as one of our big objectives to be developed further once we get back some responses, if one of our marketing objectives would be to develop some sort of packet or training for the state so that way they can help with alumni acquisition kind of at that state and local level.
Okay, so that kind of leads to my next question that I had when I started looking at the document that you sent us that was talking about the marketing strategy a little bit. So is this marketing strategy just going to be like basic and broad? Because when I think of marketing strategies, they're usually marketing something specific, very specific. So what exactly are we going to market? Like the Young Alumni Experience, an alumni association, or I was just a little fuzzy on that.
I can jump in and answer that. This is Ashley. I can completely see from your view, I probably would have had the exact same question. Or when you're thinking about what a marketing strategy looks like, you think of a product, right? Or like, what's the one thing I'm trying to sell? I think what we're really talking about here is more program strategy. So when you have, and that's where Anne-Marie is very well trying to like lead everyone into what are the objectives of this strategy? Because we can say, okay, the overall 3-year strategy for us is that we want to develop an alumni association, but there's more than that. There's more that goes into it. And so a piece of that, an objective of that, and an outcome of that would be to create training materials or a transition packet for young alumni as they come out. So that's one objective. Another is to, increase awareness of this, and that might be doing it via, the Facebook group or social media. So it's that kind of thing versus less of a, here's a product we're trying to sell, or, a program where we're just trying to get people to sign up for. It's more of what's the actual, maybe we call it a business strategy, right? Like what is the end goal we're trying to accomplish? How do we do that? So the objectives that Anne Marie is kind of listing out would help us get there. Does that help make sense of how you're seeing this?
Yeah, that makes me understand a little bit more. I guess I'm just still kind of thinking like, I don't know, maybe the reason that I'm thinking of it this way is that I did marketing strategies while I was still in school because I'm a PR major, and something that they nail into your head a lot is that you have to have a clear vision of what you're marketing. Exactly. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So I don't know, it's kind of hard I'm not necessarily thinking a product. I'm more thinking of I heard Anna Marie mention if they're marketing events or marketing something new. I forgot what specific word she used, but I was just thinking that maybe marketing strategy is not the right way to describe it. I don't know. I don't know if I'm just confusing everyone. Let me know if I need to stop talking.
No, I totally hear what you're saying. And, I did a PR master's program as well. And so I completely 100% hear you where you're coming from, because in school it's super nice and buttoned up, and it's here's your product or here's your program and here's your clear vision, and now you can write your strategy. Whereas I don't think I've ever written a strategy that was that nice and tidy like you do in school, right? So it's sometimes you have to, you have to accomplish a goal. And so for us, we want to engage young alumni. We think the way to do that is by creating an alumni association. Let's start putting pen to paper and figure out what that looks like. And so, for us, especially at council, we do that a lot of the times where we say, okay, we know we need to bring more alumni in the door. Let's put a strategy in place of the ways that we can do that. And as you start writing that, that's where you kind of firm up, okay, here's the plan. Now I can clearly see the goal and see the outcome. So it's not so much of, I know I want to market this event. It's, I know I need to reach this goal, or I know that my end goal is, acquiring more alumni, or, having more young alumni in our, database or association, whatever it ends up being. How am I going to do that? Here are the ways that I do that. That's really what the strategy becomes, just the ways to accomplish that goal. Pointing to the Google Drive, I think I put in there the alumni acquisition strategy. That's a 37-page document. So take a look at that as kind of an example, because that'll kind of show you there's a lot of thought and thinking that goes into, okay, here's what we're trying to do. Here are the different ways that we can do it.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you.
That helps. Yeah, and I'm happy to, if you
absolutely.
look at that and have more questions, definitely give me a call or shoot me an email anytime.
Perfect. Thank you.
That sounds great. Yeah, I was going to ask Ashley if maybe another way of thinking about it is this is our kind of our alumni acquisition strategy, more or less.
Yep, totally.
Okay. Great.
Because, and just so you guys know, we've had a lot of conversations on, I'm on the fundraising cohort too. And I think, we all started out with okay, here's some big things we want to do, but how do we actually do them? And so where we've landed on both sides is a key deliverable for year one is to develop a strategy to reach some goals that you guys are defining. So you guys very early on were big goal for us is alumni association. And so the key deliverable in that is laying out a strategy of how do we get there? How do we launch that? What does it look like? What does that mean in the long run? What are the, steps over the next 3 years that it's going to take to do that? So both kind of groups are going through the same exercise now of what does the strategy look like for us? How do we, inform ourselves to be able to write this strategy? And that's where the research comes in.
That sounds great. Okay, great. Good discussion. back to the ideas that we were going through before, and kind of brainstorming on what we want those top line objectives to be. Just going to go back to open that up for some more discussion. We've talked about the Young Alumni Summit being a key component of that, the social media / online alumni community, working on that as well. And then we also talked about a training material or some sort of transition packet for young alumni. Are there any other ideas or expanding or expansions to the ideas that we've already talked about?
I think that that's a great start to that list. And then I think that this is a conversation that we should revisit after we get the data back.
Yeah, I agree. I think those are three great areas. I would expand maybe the social one to be awareness, because then that gives us some more flexibility to have some more creative freedom on what other ways we can make people aware of it versus just social.
That sounds great. All right. Well, if there's no more further discussion, then we will move on to kind of the last point that I wanted us to talk briefly about before we look at our upcoming monthly meeting schedule. So to kind of update you just about the conversations that I've had with Abby and Kenisha with our progress so far, and the discussions we've been having about the Young Alumni Association. They had a recommendation for us, and this is kind of what we talked about in the last meeting, but just to kind of give you guys an update on what we talked about the last time I chatted with them. So we know that that what we're trying to do as a cohort, we're looking for, of course, objectives that we can accomplish as a cohort, kind of as an independent or independently. So within our cohort, things that we're able to accomplish without having to rely on significant resources or anything like that from council. Whereas a full-fledged alumni association, we know is going to take a lot more than we're able to do on our own, but we're still going to work on laying the groundwork for that. So because we want to, essentially, if the Young Alumni Summit does get implemented, we really want that to, we talked about how we really want that to be kind of like the hallmark event of the Young Alumni Association, and from the start, so that way from the beginning, it's very clear that that's a part of what we're trying to do, kind of having it already branded as part of the Young Alumni Association. So Abby and Kenisha had suggested that kind of with the development of the association, that we start small and kind of identify some of the basic things that we'll need. So for example, maybe a logo and a brand or a tagline or something like that. Identifying kind of the basic framework that we would need if we were to try and market the Young Alumni Summit as part of the association, just some of those basic things that we would need. And we talked about how we can more or less establish kind of that framework for the Alumni Association, and kind of establish that without it necessarily being a fully functional independent organization, if that kind of makes sense. So the idea was maybe this year, while we're still working on our research and our acquisition strategy, focus on some of those basic things like like just the brand, the logo, tagline, that sort of thing. So that way, when the Young Alumni Summit comes, we have something to associate with that. And then as we go on throughout the next 2 years, we can expand to that, and we can work on developing a formal proposal to National 4-H Council for what our end goal would be as far as the association goes. But we can also begin establishing some of the smaller things on our end, and maybe that includes working on the social media aspect and the online community before we have an established, fully fledged organization. So does that make sense so far? Okay, great. So what I wanted to identify tonight was just do a little bit of for us to do a little bit of brainstorming and kind of identify what we want those key areas of development to be for that first year. So for example, having a logo. And we won't necessarily assign roles to work on any of this quite yet, but at least identifying what those areas of development would be and what we think it's reasonable for within the first year to kind of set as our goals. So by the end of year one, we would like to have a logo, that sort of thing. So I will open that up for discussion now.
Probably also a mission statement or a vision. And
Anna Maria, this is Ashley too. And kind of thinking about the conversation we just had of like, the strategy kind of helps to inform all of that.
Mm-hmm.
I think if we can get further on the development of the strategy, that will help us figure out what we need to do, right? So if we start writing down, okay, we want to do awareness, we want to do a transition packet, then the transition packet's probably a better place to start versus some sort of like branding project,
Okay.
So I almost want to say that, and somebody else like totally step in if you guys don't agree, but I want to almost say now, like talking through it more, it might be too early to say, here's everything we're going to do in the meantime while we're, working on this longer term proposal or strategy. I think we need to, kind of see what the research tells us, and then start working on the strategy. And out of that, we'll figure out, okay, here's kind of things that we need.
Okay. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That does.
Anybody else disagree?
Awesome. All right, that sounds good. Once we have kind of our research in, would it maybe be worth having a discussion with Abby and Kenitra to just kind of find out, as far as like the progress of the Young Alumni Summit, what they would need in order for us to brand that as something to do with the Alumni Association?
Yeah, I think we need to get an idea from them on how close or how far away something like the summit would be, because that would obviously take a lot of resources from, from our national team to figure that out, because I wouldn't necessarily say there would be a logo or brand, but there might just be kind of a look and feel to it. We're super, and sorry, this is a little bit of my marketing OCD, but we're very careful to not just slap logos on everything, because next thing you know, you have a logo for, every little thing you do. So it might just be more of kind of like a different look and feel to the event versus a specific logo or brand. But I do think, a mission statement for an alumni association is definitely a good thing to have in general as part of that strategy. And then we can just check in with Abby and Kenitra on what it looks like timing wise for a summit.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. Does anybody else have any more discussion points? Okay, great. So that's something that we'll revisit a little bit later once we get some more information from our research. So the next thing, the last thing that we have to do before we wrap up for the evening is just to talk about our meeting schedule moving forward. At the last meeting, we talked about whether or not we wanted to hold a meeting in December as well, to based on kind of what our progress was and how we felt about things, whether or not we wanted to try and sneak something in there between when finals weekends and when the holidays start, because I know everybody is busy. So moving forward, we know that we have that deadline of the week of December 11th to have all of our survey questions in and have the final draft of our survey. How do people feel about our progress so far? And would you guys like to have a meeting in December? Do you feel like we don't need it? I figured I would open that up for you guys and see what you thought.
I think that if we all take the time to send in the comments and suggestions on the SurveyMonkey, then we don't really need to have a face-to-face.
Okay.
I agree with that. I just think that since what we're going to do is going to be mostly fine-tuning and, setting more of our deadlines and maybe a little bit about that with the survey. We probably don't need more than just, efficient email communication.
Mm-hmm.
Anna Marie, this is
I
Oakley.
agree.
Would it work to just do something like in the very beginning of January, after the holidays are over with?
Yeah, I think that would be fine.
This is Ashley. I agree with that because then that'll help us kind of kick off the distribution of the survey.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that too. I thought that we were talking about just December.
I think that would be great. That would let us, that would let us kind of get back into the swing of things, start things off strong, touch base after the holidays. Yeah, I think that'd be great. All right, so we'll plan on having a meeting early in January, and I'll send out a doodle poll with that, unless we want to try and establish kind of a monthly meeting schedule. I figure by now, does everybody have their schedules for next semester roughly? Because what we can do is we can set it up to be, for example, like the first or second Thursday of every month, or something like that. I'm looking at the calendar for January to see when. Let's see. So if we kept our meetings on Thursdays, we could do it either the 4th or the 11th, but I'll open that up for discussion too. Does anybody have any days of the week, evenings that just do not absolutely work for them, or that sort of thing?
This is Gabby. Mondays would probably not be good at all for me.
Okay.
I vote that we keep it on Thursdays because Thursdays work for the most
Agreed.
part.
All right. Any disagreement to Thursdays? Does the time still work for everyone? 5:30 to 7?
Could we push it back to 6?
I would be fine with that.
I'm fine with that too.
Yeah. All right. That sounds good. So we'll mark off 6 to 7:30 p.m. Now, I know we want to have a meeting in early January. So looking at the Thursdays in January, that would put it on either the 4th or the 11th. If we want to kind of kick off January and get our survey out really quickly, at the early end of the month, then possibly the 4th would be a better date. But would we want to keep our meetings consistently on the first Thursday of the month, or would we want to have a different Thursday of the month?
The second Thursday of the month works better for me, but it's really up to you guys.
Okay.
Either is fine with me, but I do think that we should do the January one on the 4th, just so we can get a jump start on that survey, get it out as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with Gabby.
Right. So would there be any problems doing, so if we do that January 4th one on the first Thursday, but then after that for the remaining months, do it on the second Monday or second Thursday of each month?
That works perfectly.
Awesome. All right. So second Thursday of each month, except for January, from 6 to 7:30 p.m. That sounds great. All right, so we can go ahead and wrap up. So be on the lookout for another email regarding, I'll kind of summarize the meeting and send out the meeting notes once I get those finalized. But what we'll be working on these next couple of weeks, make sure that you get a chance to look over the survey. Once everybody has submitted their suggestions, we'll go through, and once we get the questions from the fundraising committee, we'll go ahead and kind of create another draft, have that ready to go out to you guys so we can give it another final look over. So most of our efforts will be focused on just developing that over the next couple of weeks. So does anybody have any last minute questions, comments, suggestions, concerns? All right. Well, with that being said, I will let you guys go. Thank you guys so much for making some time for this call and for all your hard work and great insights.
Bye, everyone. Talk to you later.
Guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Thank y'all.